Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be back speaking to the Indian Ocean Conference. I just wish I were back in the Indian Ocean and not in wet London. I'd like to start by doing some very general scene setting before we get the experts in the area of the Indian Ocean to give their information and thoughts. Some fundamental precepts. I think we all learnt during the COVID pandemic the importance of logistics and the supply chain, and people who didn't even know the expressions logistics and supply chain became fascinated by it. We saw the airlifts of PPE, now of course the airlifts of vaccines. But even such small details as the blockage of the Suez Canal, which means that many people in the UK now do not have any garden furniture that if we ever get a summer. So clearly for island nations, maritime transport is especially essential. And the whole world is so interdependent now that logistics and transport is absolutely primordial. And I know from working with the UN Refugee Agency how vital logistics and speedy clearing and handling is important to responses to refugee emergencies or natural disasters. And of course, it's not only economics. The major contributions made by transport and logistics to economic growth is added to by its role in allowing sustainable development, access to health, education, information exchange, and promoting social cohesion. Travel broadens the mind, and even trading with other nations as well. And in parallel, empowering women is a key element in development. Obviously, educating women makes healthier and more educated children, more educated and better society. Giving women economic empowerment gives more spending to the family and greater involvement, long-term benefits. And politically, giving women a voice leads to better planning and more balanced strategic decisions. I would say also that empowering women is a moral imperative, and I think that is recognized in the Sustainable Development Growth 5. And Mark's already looked a little at women's participation in the workforce. In terms of their participation in the transport sector, it's still relatively low. And looking at the latest figures from Gartner's report this year, you can see the percentage of workers who are women in the supply chain workforce goes down the higher up the level of workers you look at. The figures for maritime transport are particularly low, although this figure of 2% that's been quoted as recently as 2018, I believe hasn't changed since 2002. I think there's been no data collected. And there is a new survey taking place thanks to the International Maritime Organization this year. But even if it's gone up a lot, it's still going to be not very many, mostly on cruise ships. And interestingly, when I docked into Port Louis, Mauritius in 2017 on the cruise ship Queen Elizabeth, I was very proud that we had a woman captain. By the way, Mark, the photograph on the bottom right is the ladies of the port of Tema in Ghana, which may have been one of your former stamping grounds. Generally, in the workforce, women have lower participation rates at higher level. If you look worldwide at the number of entrepreneurs, corporate board members, and CEOs, they're very much lower than the figures that we have in front of us here for the total workforce. And worldwide, only 17% of company board members are women, and only 5% of chairs of boards are women. For years, it's been Norway, Sweden, and Denmark who's headed the list. But this year's figures from the World Bank show that actually Thailand now has the greatest percentage of women on boards of companies, which is, I think, very remarkable. And there is, of course, excuse me, there is, of course, often a pay gap in the workforce, even for similar work, where this is not made illegal. Things are gradually improving. I mean, since I spoke on this topic in 2018, the figures have improved. Smart managers are addressing this issue, and I think this has been supported by some legal measures. I mentioned trade unions becoming more inclusive. Trade unions, particularly in the transport and port sectors, have traditionally been a bastion for men. But this photograph is very recent, refers to a discussion, negotiations between the workers and the port management in Monrovia, Liberia. And following this in the press, it was obvious that women were playing an increasingly important role as negotiators with the management. And this may be supporting the view that some people have that women are better at soft negotiations, but dogged enough to get the result. Certainly, professional bodies are becoming much more welcoming to women members. When I joined the former Chartered Institute of Transport in the 1970s, I then applied to go on the council, and I became, in 1980, only the second ever woman on the CIT council. I did then go on to become the first ever international vice president. But when I joined the council, I was offered to form a little working group to discuss the colour scheme for repainting the office. And I said I would actually rather join the membership and recruitment committee or the finance committee. Now this month, the now Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport in the UK has appointed 3 new council members, and they are all women. And to their credit, they haven't even remarked on that in making the announcement, which I think is to their credit. So how do we encourage and continue to encourage greater female participation? Starting young, I was very thrilled when I was speaking in Mauritius to see that a lot of seats at the back were filled up with schoolgirls who'd been bussed in to listen to our workshop. And promotion in schools of logistics to career, I think, would be a very good start. Obviously, we need a more inclusive environment in the workplace. I say both physically and attitudinally. I took part in a webinar a couple of months ago on public transport in Africa. And one of the speakers was saying that one of the things that put women off becoming drivers, bus drivers or minibus drivers in her city, and common to many other places, was the lack of women's toilets at bus depots and bus stops and along the route. And this sort of thing is so simple to try and fix. They were desperate to get more women drivers because they said they were much more concerned about safety and improve the quality of the driving and the standard of the vehicle. And of course, attitudinal is the key one as well, and training in diversity and inclusion, which can go some way to improving attitudes of male workers. But also, it's not just about gender. It can become a more inclusive workplace for different ethnicities, people of different ages, people with disabilities. And we can't dismiss the issue of sexual harassment in the workplace and violence, which can be not only from other workers, but in the case of public transport, from passengers. There are specialized training courses now being run by the IMO in many countries in the South for women in port management, which I think is an excellent example. And events such as today's go a long way to help promote the concept. And I think particularly important are peer support groups and mentoring and coaching so that younger women entering a logistics career can be supported in progressing. And there are various groups, as the Women International Shipping and Trade Association, which is supporting the IMO in its current survey of women working on ships. And of course, there's WILAT. We can't stop without a mention of WILAT. You'll hear much more about this later. But this photograph was taken at the Mauritius Indian Ocean Conference of some of the WILAT members who were attending then. But WILAT was founded by a group of FCILT women members in Nigeria, but it's gone international. It's got 3,000 members in 22 countries, including Mauritius, Madagascar, and very thriving in Sri Lanka, which we'll hear more of later. There'll soon be a chapter in the Seychelles, becoming increasingly influential. And I would say it would be lovely to see a chapter of WILAT in La Réunion. And I would close by asking the management of Le Port Réunion if they would consider supporting the foundation of a WILAT chapter. I will leave that there. Thank you very much for your attention.